Take a breath, take a couple breaths. Know that you could achieve some calmness. Let it load. Let it load for a little bit. Let's see where we at. So, the first note here is, you could say the quote unquote feminine solar system, end quote, is intertwined with something of a masculine solar system. One solar system could be going towards external, one solar system could be going receding. They're one and the same, but they're different because one's going outward, one's going inner. How that could translate is the feminine solar system, and and just another keynote here for me and my own education is there was a really unique audio transmission where I just kind of really break down the different types of solar systems. So if you're interested in that in the future and you want to do a fair exchange of like actually obtaining some real genuine balanced shit, then that will be there in the future. Excuse me for that. So I'm just saying that because like as we're misinterpreting anything, we're losing the real translation of it. And if we don't have the real translation of it, then we're not going to know what piece of information is pointing towards a certain type of wholeness. So I don't know how it looks on the screen because my glasses are kind of blurry. But so yeah, just kind of like pausing in between the moments if you can, because that's where the piece is. But obviously within the piece and the different dualities of 3D respectively, we're gonna have to rebound out of the piece and the settling and engage in activities of the quote unquote the let's just call it like let's just call them the challenge gods, right? Because the challenge gods in their different levels of magnification, they're not just one thing. They have their own quote unquote shadows, end quote, and their non-shadows, right? So as they have their non-shadows, they're also like upholding a key principle, and the belief is kind of like the could be something of an aftermath. You don't have to believe anything for something to be true. Shout out to the predecessors, because we're going towards their challenge. You know how they say let it unfold as it should be or whatever. That's you kind of like accepting the challenge and accepting things as they are, because if things were to unfold as they are supposed to naturally, what would that really mean? It means other things in some type of nature matrix, they're playing their program for you, and you're lessening a particular type of resistance by accepting that they are the reality of what they are, because not even like you could call the malefic planets, they could even have their positive sides, right, in their own like pockets of like oscillation and streaming dualities of alternations and whatnot. So you could say even the malefics have their benevolent side, and even the benefics have their quote unquote shadow side. And the shadow and the detriment, those are two different things, but they could still on a surface level, they could make something to be a unique surface level character of the lineage of those celestial object beings. So I bring up the feminine solar system because the feminine solar system, it could be translated as the Adam Cadman body that has its own stationary template as the 1st through 12th house, it being like a different template where it is always like that, And then from different, evolving progressive astrologies in a standard way, the masculine system is like the first house is like it is the sun, the sun is like something of the first house. So simultaneously, respectively, like bring down the grounded intelligence, the solar system could have a feminine aspect and a masculine aspect. And within the feminine aspect and the masculine aspect, those things are creating the production and the titillization and the progression of the external celestial objects. Because I think the celestial objects, they're coming from the wombs of their constellations, and the constellations of the planets put together make the higher selves of the planets themselves, respectively. So, with that being said, those celestial objects, those are like the external furthering of those things representing a whole different energy elsewhere in the quote unquote universe, etc. End quote. So within that, we could see like if Mars is in a certain sign and your Mars is in a certain sign, those Mars are aspecting the collect on Earth, around the Earth play, the drama set play of Earth. Around Earth are nearby vicinity celestial objects. Around Earth, the sun, there's a unique opposition to the Earth and sun. The Earth is in a constellation of natural darkness, right? It being the Earth representing nature, nature representing kind of just like some type of like what do you call that? Some type of moldability, pretty much. And within that moldability, that is the Earth and the humans in one aspect. And that Earth is kind of it's having a relationship with the space constellation, and the space constellation is taking in a particular celestial object, and that's beaming it back to the Earth that the humans are on. So so all the planets, according in correlation to the human design gates, it's different because if the sun is in the gate as opposed to like a different planet, the sun is like we're taking action towards that gate, you know. Mars being in the gate, we're having new ambition and passion, and we're understanding the ambition and the passion and like warlike tendencies within the gate, because Mars is in that area, and so within that collective area, we know what Mars is geared towards, because all the planets in the gates, they're different. So Mars in the gate, because obviously you can see the sun is in a certain gate, right? So just because the sun is in that gate, that doesn't necessarily mean we're having a unique dialing in from a different layer, because the planet is ultimately giving us leverage to a certain layer. So if the moon is in so it's just there's just differences. If like the moon is in the gate, we're like emotionally reacting and we're charging up nearby in how things are getting kind of like metaphysically fine-tuned. The moon metaphysically fine-tuning the energies and receiving new energies, and just like kind of the human and the moon is also like the human experience, like how like the humans create an emotion generally from all their emotions, and that emotions, not good not bad, is creating a moon energy, and that moon energy is being kind of like fueled and encapsulated by the space that it's in, because obviously if the sun is in a certain gate, it's not necessarily embodying what that gate could do, because the planet, it's how the planet is like charging the gate of the space constellation, because the gates are in a space constellation, and within that space constellation, we're only acting a particular way towards that space constellation, and that space constellation could react differently or have a different combustion effect per the celestial object that's in the space, because like if there's a room, be it, there's a room of just like, a room to be present, a room to like, be practical, a room to communicate, a room to like, build a structure, cancer, a room to like, kind of build a stage, a room to like, be like heal with unique medicinal qualities, Virgo, a room to like, be prepared for like some metaphysical change. And there's a bunch of low-key like drama that could be there too, because we're kickstarting a unique new, unique quote unquote fresh moon cycle end quote. Seventh house, there's a room for just kind of like seeing a unique inner flex original open source of like just a very unique threshold of like how sea creatures could just kind of be opposed in their own dimension, and opposed from it could just be a war narrative. Eighth house, there could be a room for like just kind of like divine mother queendom shit. 10th house, a room for like some Sumerian shit and how they have their own like heights. 11th house, and then the 12th house, a room for just kind of like seeing a unique source of them, and how offsprings of different beings had this different structure in a more like liquefied way. 12th house, so there's different rooms. So within those 12 different rooms, based on the new celestial object that's in the certain room, based on its closeness and distance from how the earth is where the earth is, the different types of constellations, either feminine or masculine, are around the earth. And then the celestial objects are in that space, and they're beaming their self and their signature layer when they're in the space, and they're making a beam towards the earth, right? So within all of that stuff, if the sun is in a certain gate, I'll just read it right now. I'm on a particular human design page. So if the sun is in the secondary phone is on 7%. So if the sun is in a certain gate, that doesn't necessarily mean we're getting like we're not getting a different combustion effect, because the sun is in the gate 20 contemplation, gate of the now, I am now. And I'm not going to get too long-winded because I'm like I'm more intuitive. And I just kind of recognize not to be kind of like not to be too overly rigid, respectively. So like when I read like the sun is in the gate, I'm like, oh man, we could just be like kind of like going towards that for life energy. But that doesn't mean like Mars is in this gate, it doesn't mean Venus is in this gate. We're seeing a particular esoteric vision in a certain seasonal temperament. And as we're seeing that like temperament of like what it means to be in the now is just like seeing some type of baby has been born, respectively. And as that baby has been born, now we're kind of in like a fluid contemplation of like what it really means to be like a caretaker. Cause I feel like a moon in Sag, like Sag, like the Sag constellation in the I Ching gates. There's there's two gates in the Sag constellation: the taming power of the great and the taming power of the small. So both of those, the taming power, this is like somehow like Jupiter's key signature energy, and on a different layer, Jupiter is Sag, Scorpio, and Libra on a particular nuanced different level. Jupiter is like kind of like in his like final kind of like highest height of um of just a certain like seasonal wavelength. Jupiter's like super, like he's like super exalted and rules the Sagittarius constellation, right? So within that, there's keynotes within what the Sagittarius constellation really is. And those two keynotes of the I Ching within the Sag constellation are the taming power of the great and the taming power of the small. And it's like some type of Jupiter quality is to like recognize ourselves as the macro needs to go into a micro for a different type of yin and yang creative project. And the micro needs to go back to the macro for a different type of yin and yang creative project. Because because that's how the yin and yang is expressing itself. And if it's expressing itself like that, it's only up to us to contemplate like why that's a need and why that would do that, because it's just a natural progression of different, you know, up and down type of oscillations of like their own metaphysical principles respectively. So like the taming power of the small and the taming power of the great, the taming power of the small, that would mean like there's great power in like great detail, or not necessarily just a detail, like some like, you know, unique unit of a being. They could create a significant change per how they're kind of like holding up their leverage of just like a constellation collective. And a constellation collective is like certain collectives obviously and point and average out to some type of theme, but yet the essence and the art of differentiation is where we lean towards prominent energies of one more than another, but still all of them are still there. So that's the essence of differentiation, because we're still leaning on all the other principal effects of the constellations. So I'm just kind of talking about Sag here. So Sag is like there's two significant gates within constellation of Sag: the taming power of the small and the taming power of the great. And the taming power of the great is on a different threshold level. There's some force in the energy that is like, there's different forces that check us differently, right? There's different, like, it's like, and it's not necessarily like personally direct or direct personal, but it's like on a low key level, it is like, it is celestial, but it's low key and we don't want to understand it like that for whatever reason. And that's okay, you know? But if Sag is the taming power of the great and the taming power of the small, then there's some type of like the theme above the theme that could be like passed over to that is like there's some type of caregiver um dynamic here, you know. There's some, or caretaker, you know, there's a caretaker because we're caretaking for like how things could get formed up within just a general higher collective. But that's the thing, we're barely growing into that, you know. We're growing into a general higher collective because for some reason we're in our own unique war, and that's like super subjective to you. And I'm not talking about anybody's like, you know, personal war shit right here. I'm just saying like at, directly opposed to God, the universe, we're like we're in our own internal war. And as we're in our own internal war, we more or less forgot that. And as we're growing up spiritually, we're remembering that. So it's like we keep forgetting that we're growing up spiritually or energy like. And please restart this from the beginning. I'm 18 minutes in, and I got some, you know, I got some I got some notes I'm looking at, or some yeah, I'm looking at some type of note board, original open source, whatever. So let me see, let me charge this phone. Oh, both my phone 2%, dude. I'm like 2552. So to look at like, if you would like to look at something of a more feminine solar system, you could say in a more receding aspect that that Gem could be the third house, and within the feminine solar system of the third house, Gemini constellation, what's in the third house? Sun and Venus. So within the feminine solar system's throat chakra, she's bearing the external planet Earth's orbital, you know, play and orbital like dynamics, you know, already original open source. The feminine solar system, she's the third house being quote unquote Gemini, end quote. The sun and Venus are there, so the feminine solar system within her throat, she's birthing. It's like the divine mother is like on a, you know, mystical level. Like the feminine solar system in her throat is, you know, she's like reimagining like her son, her new physical creation, and the light shadow of the earth and the sacral chakra of, you know, the Earth to the solar system is Venus, right? So so Venus is it's the sacral chakra, and it's seeing vividly what the sacral chakra is. That's what precisely what Venus is on an intuitive level. So within Venus being the sacral chakra is like in the feminine solar system, and that feminine solar system, it's like, but that's the thing, we're off shifted, we're like going towards the external pursuit. So that's why we could be like out of sync with this, because we're too polarized, we're too like, we have to do the work to catch up to like what those energies are doing. Because if like the sun and Venus are in the third house, then that means we're taking like big action on a higher mystical communication field. We're actually being like our very like titillization, and our very like fornication, and our very like pleasure seeking thrills are actually they're being birthed by a divine mother's expression, right? Because Venus is in the third house in in the feminine solar system. So within Venus in the third house, we're finding real delight within just kind of like sharing our experience, listening to others, letting people share their story if they so feel comfortable, and just letting other people like, you know, like hearing other people's like stories genuinely, mind you. And as that's happening, we're like the whole low-key production of like human civilization is being kind of like influenced from like the divine mother's communication network, the throat chakra. You could even say like the hive queen's um bee network, you know. Sometimes and then the quote unquote the metaphysical honeybee end quote comes to mind, because the metaphysical honeybee is like, we're working for the queen in a metaphysical aspect. And this is something of a it's like a different type of hive mind, right? So within that hive mind, we're getting we could like the collective networks, if they're like, if they're not polarized but just masculine, if they have a balance yin and yang, and they practice feminine work, but like energetically and esoterically, then you then we could actually catch game to like why we're even like getting like the impulses, why like, and Venus low key is like, it's even desire, you know. So it's like our desires are being kind of initiated from basically on a real metaphysical tangible level. The desires are being initialized and initiated from a whole different original influence, and that original influence is like, and I don't know how much I don't know how you want to structure the round table of the divine mothers, but y'all could do that how you will, and I'm not too worried about it, because I'm just trying to understand their shit, you know. And within their shit, you know, within like the feminine solar system, inside of some type of like different type of galaxy, the feminine being, with however we're understanding it, the feminine dragon mother that we're living, that has created different types of masculine dragon micro beings, pretty much everything on an energy basis. We're getting like the space of like communication from the divine mothers. It's receiving stimulation and pleasure driven pursuits. Pleasure driven pursuits are in some type of field of communication. So it's like we have a chance to maturely communicate, you know, and we're acting towards like pleasure pursuit. We're just acting towards pleasure, and it's not good, it's not bad, it's not human, it's not fucking GMO, it's not detrimental, it's not fucking fake, it's not fucking like esoteric kindergarten respectively, because this is like the energy and the message is going to real solutions here. It's not none of that shit. So so within the feminine solar system of things, you could say the first house is Aries, right? And the first house, where like the south node or the north node is in some type of feminine first house. So the north node is in the first house. So so our destiny is pretty much like the divine mother, and we're just out of focus with that. It's some type of like receding hidden divine mother that really doesn't give a fuck in a respective metaphysical way. That's not good, that's not bad, it's actually a good thing that we don't give a fuck sometimes. But like there's nuances is to what I'm saying. So like the north node is some type of Aries pursuit. So we're like the collective, energy dynamics, we're being pulled to like um and you could say that's the 11th house. Aries is in the 11th house, masculine solar system. Aries is in the first house, feminine solar system. So we're going towards like some type of external casual pursuit, and we're using the Aries energy to deposit that into 11th house attributes. 11th house being a threshold of in between the masculine solar system and the feminine solar system. But in the feminine solar system, it's like Mars and North Node. So we're having ambition. We're seeing like warlike tactics. We're seeing like pretty much like how war gets resetted, how war resumes, and how war has pause times. That's what Mars is. Mars is a bunch of different types of war, and the war is inevitable because that's just the creation of the mechanics, and how the mechanics needs to do that with how narratives need to like come and go, and they need to settle within themselves based on how we're all kind of individuated. And from individuation, there's just casual problems and conflicts arise. And within that, they have to be played out. And Mars sees that, recognizes that, and he's there just to cater it. And you could say, Mars is Skanda, Skanda is Mikael, and Mikael is, Allah, respectively. And that's just on some neutral shit. Because we're eventually 5 years from now we will see the balanced intellect of all the religions, right? We will see what the religions will come to. Duh. Because if you can't see the new translation of this shit, and this shit already been debunked a long time ago, I'm just refreshing it, then that's your battery is testing me. Like there's love, but the thing is we have to we're re what do you call that, we're just like we have to understand these things, not just with love, intellect. And if and there's a disclaimer, if you think I'm wrong, there I'm just putting it out there just to like really see what the predecessors are telling us. So within that, the sun is kind of like so within like there could also be like there's always going to be an update, right? So within the dream time, you could say like in the dream time we're going towards the crown of the divine mother. This is like divine feminine, quote unquote, younger games, end quote. And we're having ambitions to really discover ourselves, right? Perhaps. Or the shadow of that is there could be some type of narrative where we could forget ourselves in an extreme way, because that's just the extremities of things. And the fifth house masculine solar system is the south node. So Libra in the fifth house, south node Libra, fifth house. We could be like, south node, that could be the quote unquote annoying energies, end quote, because it's like that's what's coming back to us. It's like, oh, but it doesn't have to be annoying, but it's like, oh, like we're using these energies, or we're seeing like what has already happened from how I resonate with this energy, and how I resonate with this energy and how it's playing into my life. That could be kind of being replayed in my life, south node energies. So within those south node energies, um so this other phone's at 3%, this phone's at 2% for some reason. So I'm gonna have to conclude this. And then the moon and Sag is like, this is like caregiver type of shit. It's like, you know, the caregiver, the extreme polarities of the planets, the extreme polarities of the gods. We're misunderstanding that because they have their own light sides and shadow sides, right? So within those shadow sides and the light sides, we could get lost in the quote unquote shadow side end quote. But what the light side of Jupiter is trying to tell us is we have to fucking be really really responsible, because if we're not responsible, then shit is just going to play out how it's going to play out. And we're like we're like emotionally kind of out of sync with that, and we're quote unquote offended by that because we don't understand how the fucking moon works. And then Jupiter in the 12th house, Jupiter in the second house. Woo, 12th house, second house. So like on an external pursuit, like Jupiter's at home. Like he's satisfied, low key in the external front in a paradoxical way, because the threshold that's what the threshold is like making a it's there's a certain like counteracting effect. The particular counteract effect that I'm talking about is there's a masculine solar system and there's a feminine solar system, and in between those solar systems there's a threshold. And within the threshold, if like Taurus is in the 12th house right now, from the sun's vantage point and the perspective, the sun's leaving a trailblazing effect of where the sun is in Gemini. The 12th house is in Taurus in an external effect. The 12th house is in Taurus in an external effect, and and Jupiter is there in aspecting and positioning within the sun. Then in a threshold effect, Jupiter is in the 12th house, so he's familiar with that 12th house energy of how the sun is exalted from the first house, and on the bottom and opposed to the first house, quote unquote, is the 12th house. And the 12th house to the first house, that's like a spiritual foundation. So that's some type of foundation, right? So the sun exalting something in the external solar system on a threshold dynamic effect. The 12th house is where the metaphysical lineages are, and those metaphysical lineages on an external pursuit is being expanded. There's much ritual and philosophy being conducted based on how we came about and our genetic lineage, most respectively. And yeah, do you, man? Do you? No shame, man. Take as much time as you want, man, because you don't got to prove anything. So Jupiter being in the 12th house, so within that threshold effect, we're like, we're just seeing like, we're just the extremity of like, we're just seeing the extremity of like everything, you know? Jupiter in 12th house, that's the extremity of everything. And Uranus is there in the 12th house with Jupiter. So, because Jupiter is like, he is an extremity, right? Respectively, because he's expanding. Expansion, that kind of implies extremeness. And he's like the ruler of some type of 12th house dynamic. He's like a low key, he's like one of like overall, like some, like no one likes to talk about hierarchy. I get it. I get it. You know, we're all offended by hierarchy, but we're misinterpreting hierarchy because the nature of the hierarchy of nature, that's the shit we forgot about. That's the shit we don't understand. That's the shit we're confused about. Oh my God, I'm at 2%. Okay, I'm gonna. So I'll come back. My phones are just kind of like really, they're really, it's not, it's not really there. Or it's here, but it's like the phone, my phones need to be charged because I could keep going, you know. So I'm gonna conclude this. Thank you guys very much. I'll come back with a part two. Sun and Venus, solar plexus and sacral chakra the in Gemini. So acting and pleasure pursuit, responding towards communication like networks and seeing pleasure and action plans from communication like networks. Hopefully in a higher octave, hopefully in a balance, hopefully recognizing no detriments. Have the best life ever.